now that we have been working with percents, changing them to decimals, changing them to fractions, kind of moving them back around, now we're ready to start solving some problems with some percents. So our first one is something called percent of a number. So find this page in your notes. And we're going to start with some key vocabulary. And the key is the word of. Okay? Now, the word of can come up in lots of different problems, but in a math problem, if it's kind of in between two numbers or two pieces of data, it often is a signal that we want to multiply. So the percent of a number means the percent times the number. The key is turn the percent into something we can multiply with. In this case, we're going to change it into a decimal. So we've been practicing a lot of that earlier in the unit. We're going to change that percent into a decimal, and then we're simply going to multiply times our number. So for instance, 17% of 74. Of means multiply. We're going to change our percent into a decimal. We're going to slide it 2 spots to the left. And we're going to get 12.58. Okay? It's as simple as that. Change your percent into a decimal. The of means multiply, and then we just go ahead and find our answer. So here, I'm going to move my decimal over 2 spots to 0.003 of 270, so times 270, and we get 0.36 for our answer. So that's as simple as percent of a number can get. Okay? So that's where we're going to start with today. So look at our next one. And I know it's hard for you guys to read, so you might want to write this part in. 6th grade is this left-hand one, because you can't see the colors there. 5th grade is this right-hand one, and then the 4th grade is going to be this bottom one. Just because you guys can't see the colors as easily, so it's a little easier for you to see it here. So it says the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders at Great Oaks School are making a field trip. Of the 575 students attending the trip, how many are 6th graders? So we're going to start with 6th grade. Well, 6th grade is 36% of the total students, which was 575. Well, that's just 0.36 times 575, which is about 201 students. Okay? It doesn't come out exactly. So since we're talking about a student, we're talking about something we can't really have part of something. We just have to round it off to the nearest number. Okay? But when we want to find the percent of some amount, it really just means multiply that percent times our amount. Okay? So next one is 5th grade. So we look over our chart. 5th grade is 40% of the 575 students, which is 0.40 times 575, which was 230 students, which makes sense. 40% is a little bigger than 36, so we should expect to have more students than we did in 6th grade. And then we finish with our last one, the 4th graders. They were 24% of the students of the 575. So 0.24 times 575 is going to give us 138 students. Okay. All right. So now that we've got an idea of how this works together, now let's see if we can actually put it all together with some problems of our own. So I want you to hit pause. I want you to try these 2 problems for yourself. Look up at the examples we did, work through the problems. Then when you're ready, I want you to hit play and check your answers with mine. All right, so for this one, we're going to make it into 0.26 times 50, which is 13. Here, we're going to make it into a decimal. So 0.021 times 60 is equal to 1.26. Okay? So check your answers, see how you did. If you made a mistake someplace, check them. See if you can figure out where did you get off track. And then see how you can fix it going forward. All right, back to the page. Now we're going to tackle some little bit bigger problems. So these are going to be ones where it's not quite as easy to just say, hey, I'm going to multiply this times this. So I'm going to have to set up the problem in a little different way, and I'm going to have to attack it a little bit differently. So we're going to use something called a proportion. A proportion is two fractions or ratios that are set equal to each other. So it's two fractions that are equal to each other. So this is going to be the setup of each of our proportions. On the top left, we're going to have part of something. Okay? Maybe it's the 6th graders out of the school or the 5th graders out of the school. The bottom left is going to be the whole amount. So like in our last problem, that was the total numbers of kids in our school. And then the percent is always going to go on the top right over 100, which makes sense. Percent means out of 100. Then we're going to do some math to try to figure out which of those, or try to calculate what the missing number is. We're always going to have 3 out of those 4 pieces. We want to fill in the 4th one. For these starter problems, there's going to be some keywords we can watch for. If we see the word is, it's often signaling that that's going to be the part. It's only part of the amount, it's not the whole thing. The word of often signals that we're talking about the whole thing. So if it says of 575 students, that's telling us 575 is the whole amount. The key is plug the right numbers in the right spots, and then we just do a little bit of math to find that missing number. So let's try this first one. What percent of 315 is 126? Well, I always know my 100 goes down here. The key is figuring out what else do I know? Well, it says what percent, meaning I don't know the percent. So that's my question mark. Of 315. That tells me that 315 is the whole amount, because of that word of, is 126. So 126 is my part. Okay. So we plug them all in. Now we want to figure out what is that missing number. So a lot of times in the last unit, we would look at how can a 315 turn into 100 or 100. These are not always going to play that nicely. So here's how we solve a proportion. We're going to take the 2 numbers that are diagonal and we're going to multiply them. 126 times 100. And then we're going to take the last number and we're going to divide by that 315. Okay? So we're going to multiply along the diagonal, divide by the leftover number, and our answer is going to be our solution. In this case, we're getting an answer of 40%. So we figure out where does each of those numbers go, and then we just do a little bit of math to help us solve it. So next one says, what percent of 120 is 28.8? Well, I don't know the percent, so that's my question mark. Or if you want to, that's our x, that's our unknown number. But the percent always goes over 100. It says of 120, so that's the whole amount, is 28.8, that goes up top. Now, to find x, that missing number, we're going to multiply along our diagonal, 28.8 times 100, and then we're going to divide by that leftover number, and that's going to give us our x value. 28.8 times 100 divided by 120 gives me an x of 23.5. Since we are finding the percent, it would be 23.5%. All right, last little bit. Now, we can do this same idea, but sometimes we have to figure out what's going to go where. There's not always going to be some keywords. So we always start with our proportion. We start with our 100. And then we read the problem and try to find some key information. Are they telling me part of something? Are they telling me the whole amount? Are they telling me the percent? It said an electronics company has 450 employees. The company plans to increase its staff by 30%. How many new employees will the company hire? Well, 30% is pretty easy. That's clearly my percent, so it goes over my 100. The 450 is where we have to think. So read the question again to yourself. what is the 450 telling me? Is that all of the employees right now? Or is that just some of the employees? Okay. I read it as an electronic company has 450 employees. That's all of the employees. That's the whole amount. So that goes down here. It wants to know how many new employees, so it wants to know the part. Okay. So the key is fill in those important pieces of information, and then we can go ahead and solve it. 450 times 3 divided by 100 gives me an x of 135. Okay. Now, think back to the very beginning of our lesson. We want to find 30% of the 450 employees. Well, that's really 0.30 times 450. And guess what that gives us for an answer? It gives us that exact same 135. So these are just two different strategies for solving the problem. If I'm just finding the percent of some number, I can go right to this method. If I'm not sure, or I'm not sure how to attack it, I can always go back to that proportion. All right, last one for today. The original price of a computer game is $45. The price is marked down by $18. What percent of the original price is the markdown? So I start with my proportion. I know my 100 goes here, and it says what percent. So I know I'm finding the percent, so that's got to be my x. So now I need to know what's all of my price and what's part of my price. Well, it says the original price is $45. Now, I know the word is there, okay? But in a word problem, we can't just go by where is and of is because they're pretty common words in word problems. So it says the original price is $45. That means that's the whole price. That's my whole amount. It's marked down by $18. 18 is just part of the price. It's the small amount they're taking off of our price. So that's going to be my part. Okay? So I multiply the two that are diagonal. I divide by my leftover piece. And I get x is equal to 40. Since we're dealing with percent, it would be 40%. That's my missing piece of information. So hopefully that made some sense. We're going to practice this tomorrow together and make sure everybody is comfortable with how to solve these problems.